The street was silent except for the sound of a boy crying. He was only 12, his hands trembling as tears streaked his face. A police officer towered over him, holding something broken in his fist. The jagged wood looked harmless, but only moments earlier it had been a small sign painted with hope. Saving for college. Now it was snapped in half, tossed down like trash. On the ground, lemonade spread in a sticky yellow river across the cracked pavement, the cups rolling away into the gutter. His dream was dissolving right in front of him. Across the street, a woman stood motionless. Her phone still dangled in her hand, the call already made. Her lips were tight, but no words came. Because the officer had not done what she expected, what he did instead left her paralyzed and changed everything for the boy she had tried to erase. His name was Jamal, a 12-year-old 7th grader who still believed in superheroes. Not the kind with capes and powers, but the kind who made real change in the world. His dream was to be the first in his family to graduate from college, to turn the cycle of struggle into something new. His mother, Denise, worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. His father had been gone for years, and Jamal never asked questions. He had learned early that some wounds were better left untouched. That summer, Denise suggested something simple, but powerful. Why not sell lemonade? Not just for extra change, but to learn responsibility, to taste independence, to believe that his dreams were worth saving for. Jamal took the idea seriously. He found an old folding table, painted a crooked wooden sign, and with his mother's help, filled a jug with real lemonade squeezed from fresh lemons. The neighborhood wasn't perfect. The sidewalks were cracked, the houses weathered, and some stood empty with boards nailed over the windows. Nights were filled with whispers of trouble, but afternoons carried a different rhythm. On those afternoons, Jamal sat proudly behind his stand, smiling as he poured cups of lemonade for whoever stopped. Each coin, each folded dollar, felt like another brick laid in the foundation of a future he was building, 1 cup at a time. Yet, shadows lingered even on the brightest days. Cars sometimes slowed when passing him, drivers glancing with cold, measuring eyes. Once, a woman clutched her purse tighter as she walked by, refusing to look at him directly. He noticed those moments. He always noticed, but he told himself that if he smiled enough, maybe they would see him for who he really was, a boy with a dream. One of his best customers was Mr. Alvarez, an elderly man from down the street. Every few days, he would shuffle up, buy 2 cups, and press an extra dollar into Jamal's hand. "Keep going, mijo," he would say, his voice tired but kind. For Jamal, those were the moments that mattered, the reminders that someone saw him, not just his skin. But life was about to tilt. He didn't know this would be the last week when selling lemonade was just about lemonade. One evening, as the sun stretched long shadows across the street, a car slowed near his stand. A woman in sunglasses stared at him, her face unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't buy, didn't say a word. She just stared before driving off. Jamal shrugged and went back to stacking cups, not knowing this was the first time she had noticed him, not knowing that the quiet stranger would soon return with far more than a stare. Her name was Karen Whitfield. To Jamal, she was just another passerby. But to the neighborhood, she was the kind of person whose voice carried weight. She lived 3 blocks over in a house with a manicured lawn and white shutters, the kind of place that silently announced privilege. She was not a politician, not a leader, but she had power, the kind of power that came from being heard, believed, and obeyed by those in uniform. Karen had a history of discomfort with difference, but most of the time her unease stayed hidden in whispers. At church, she muttered to friends about those kids who loitered outside corner stores. To her neighbors, she grumbled about unlicensed vendors making the streets look untidy. But when she saw Jamal's stand, something inside her hardened. She told herself it was about rules, about order, about doing things the right way. Deep down, though, it was about something else, something she wouldn't admit even to herself. The first complaint was a quiet conversation at church. "There's a boy selling things on the street. No permit." The second was a murmur to a neighbor. "It doesn't look right. All those people stopping." But by the third time, she didn't whisper. She called. On that bright afternoon, Jamal was stacking his cups when he noticed her across the street, phone to her ear, lips pressed tight. He couldn't hear the words, but the tone was enough. He knew what it meant. His stomach tightened. As the sound of sirens rose in the distance, growing louder until a patrol car stopped in front of him. Two officers stepped out. One scanned the table, the jug, the boy. The other kept his hand near his belt. The air was thick with tension. Neighbors peeked through blinds, doors cracked open, but no one moved closer. Karen's voice was clear now, sharp as glass. "He's selling illegally. It looks suspicious." Jamal froze, remembering his mother's warnings. "Keep your hands visible. Don't argue. Don't move too fast." He placed both palms flat on the table, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. The officers exchanged glances. One studied Jamal's cracked sneakers, his trembling hands, the sign painted with hope. Silence, stretched. Then, something unexpected happened. The first officer reached into his pocket, pulled out $1, and placed it on the table. He poured himself a cup, sipped, and said quietly, "Best I've had in a while." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. The second officer followed, pulling out $2, handing them over. "Keep the change." Neighbors whispered behind curtains, some smiling for the first time that day. Karen stood frozen, her lips tight, fury rising in her chest. But she didn't stop. That night, she filed a formal complaint with the city, framing Jamal as a problem. She claimed his stand was unsafe, that it attracted the wrong kind of people. Soon after, a city inspector appeared with a clipboard, asking questions, looking at Jamal as though he were guilty of something. Denise rushed home, panicked, pleading with them to leave her son alone. The inspector left without issuing a citation, but the warning was clear. Someone wanted Jamal gone. Then came the smaller acts. A brick thrown near the stand, shattering on the pavement. A note scrawled with shaky letters. "Go back where you came from." The rope holding his sign was cut one night, leaving it crumpled on the ground. Jamal tried to stay strong, but the fear pressed on him heavier with each passing day. Still, he returned to the stand. Every dollar mattered. Every cup poured was resistance. Every smile was defiance. But Karen was not finished. One Saturday morning, she approached directly, her steps sharp and heavy. She stopped at the table, her voice loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "You people don't listen. You don't belong here." Jamal stared at the ground. His mother was at work. He was alone. Then she pulled out her phone again, dialing, with deliberate slowness, her eyes glinting with the certainty of power. And this time, the storm would break. The squad car arrived within minutes. 2 new officers stepped out, faces colder than the last. Karen waved them over, pointing at Jamal as though she had caught a criminal in the act. "Stand up. Hands visible," one ordered. Jamal obeyed instantly, his throat dry, legs trembling. Without warning, the first officer grabbed the jug and poured the lemonade onto the pavement. The golden liquid splashed across the asphalt, spreading like a wound, soaking into the cracks. Plastic cups toppled, rolling into the gutter. Jamal's chest tightened as he watched his work, his pride, his dream dissolve in front of him. Karen folded her arms, satisfaction flickering across her face. The second officer began firing questions, his tone sharp. "Where are your parents? Do you have a permit? What are you really doing out here?" Jamal tried to answer, but his voice cracked. His words tangled. His explanations went unheard. The first officer ripped the sign from the ground and snapped it in half. The sound of splintering wood cut through the air like a gunshot. Jamal flinched, his eyes burning. Tears blurred his vision. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Neighbors gathered now, drawn by the commotion. Some raised phones, filming quietly. Others whispered with shaken heads. But still, no one stepped forward. Then, through the chaos, Denise appeared. She ran down the street, apron still on from her shift, her face etched with panic. She screamed. Her son's name, throwing herself around him, wrapping her arms around his trembling body like a shield. Her voice rose with raw anger and desperation, shaking in the summer heat. The officers hesitated, glancing at each other. Cameras pointed. The crowd grew thicker. The weight of dozens of eyes pressed down on the moment. Karen's smirk faltered, her certainty wavering. For one long, unbearable second, the scene stood frozen. The broken sign. The spilled lemonade. The boy shaking in his mother's arms. And across the street, the woman who had made the call stood still. The power draining from her face, realizing she was suddenly the only one smiling. But the story didn't end on that street. Within hours, the video spread online. Millions watched as the images ricocheted across screens. A small boy's dream destroyed, his mother's arms clutching him close, officers braking instead of protecting. The internet erupted. Some saw it for what it was, a child targeted for his skin, punished for his hope. Others tried to twist it, defending the woman with cold phrases like, "Rules are rules," and "permits matter." But the truth was there, frozen in images too raw to deny. Karen vanished from the public eye, avoiding cameras and questions, but her name was etched into whispers, hashtags, and headlines. She had wanted the boy gone, erased, invisible. Instead, she had made him known to the world. The community responded in ways no one expected. Neighbors who had once stayed silent now came forward. They rebuilt Jamal's stand, donating lemons, sugar, and cups. A man down the street created an online fundraiser. Send Jamal to college. Within days, thousands of dollars poured in, small gifts from strangers who saw themselves in him. When Denise saw the total, she cried, not only for the money, but for the proof that kindness could rise from cruelty. Jamal was overwhelmed, but he still carried the scars. He no longer sat at his stand with the same easy smile. Sirens now made his chest tighten, the memory of spilled lemonade still sharp in his mind. His childhood had been bent, reshaped by a cruelty he hadn't asked for. The town moved on as towns always do, the news cycle spinning toward the next story. But for those who had witnessed it, something lingered. A child punished for dreaming. A mother forced to shield. A woman empowered by hate. And a nation divided by what it chose to see. The last cup of lemonade was never poured. It lay instead in memory, spilled across cracked pavement, seeping into the street like a stain that rain could wash away. But history could not. And the question remained, if this could happen to a boy selling lemonade to save for college, who will be next? This isn't just about a lemonade stand. It's about a system that chose suspicion over a child's dream, and in doing so, revealed how fragile innocence can be when weighed against prejudice. Jamal's story is a mirror, showing us not just what happened to him, but what continues to happen to so many others in silence. The question we must ask is simple, yet haunting. How many more Jamals will it take before change finally comes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, consider subscribing so that they can continue to be told again and again.